Hello and good morning. I'm Michael Noble, the Executive Director at Fresh Energy, and I couldn't be more excited to welcome you to our annual breakfast, our 5th annual breakfast, and the first virtual one. We are really honored that so many of you could come and join us today. I know this year is a little bit different, especially miss seeing you in person. Despite the change in the format and all the changes in the world, one thing remains the same: Fresh Energy's determination to tackle this climate crisis and to continue speeding toward a clean energy future in Minnesota and beyond. Seeing the support of so many friends this morning, including our generous event sponsors, our table captains, it's incredibly inspiring. And thank you to everyone for taking the time to be here. Make no mistake, you are truly making an impact. You're changing the course of history, and you're ensuring that everyone will have a clean, healthy planet. Kids growing up today and the future generations. So speaking of future generations, there's someone I want to introduce you to. Many of you have come to know me as one of the friendly faces at Fresh Energy over the years, but Fresh Energy staff includes more than 25 smart, amazing, talented climate warriors. Many of them are younger and fresher faced than me. Janiece Watts is one of our rising stars at Fresh Energy. She's a senior policy associate on our energy access and equity team, and she's going to help by emceeing this morning. First, she's going to kick off the program and get the show on the road. So welcome, Janiece Watts.
Thank you, Michael. So great to be here. You are right. We are truly living through a historical time. When the Fresh Energy staff packed up our workspaces in March, we thought the pandemic would disrupt our lives for a few weeks. Remember March? Since then, we've been surviving a global pandemic, witnessing massive wildfires and superstorms, a contentious election season, and a worldwide reckoning with the progress we have yet to make in racial equity and justice. My work has always centered climate, social equity, and environmental justice. Equity must be at the center of solving our climate crisis. Part of centering equity is about understanding root causes, like the barriers that Black, Indigenous, and people of color face accessing renewable energy and energy efficiency. I feel grateful and energized that we in the climate and clean energy movement are finally facing these realities head on, and that Fresh Energy is really leaning into this. Speaking of big moments in our society, I know that many of us have been actively involved in the upcoming election. As a nonpartisan, 501c3 nonprofit, Fresh Energy does not and cannot endorse candidates. But we encourage you to use your voice for a free and fair election and to make sure that every vote is counted. So everyone out there who hasn't already but can, please vote. Now, no matter what happens in 12 days, Fresh Energy will remain steady as your climate champion, speeding Minnesota's transition to clean, affordable, renewable energy. Our work is moving forward, and in a few minutes, you'll see a short video about how the Fresh Energy team is getting things done, despite working remotely. A few housekeeping items. I hope you'll refer back to the packet that was mailed or emailed to you with more info about what to expect this morning. It's also linked on the benefit breakfast page on our website. Feel free to use the chat box and look for a few polls during our time together. Lastly, how would you like to hit the road in a brand new Tesla for a day? Later in the program, we'll be announcing 2 lucky winners who will have the opportunity to have a Tesla for 24 hours. So be sure to stay tuned to see if you won. Up next, we have the privilege of welcoming Governor Tim Walz for a short conversation with our own Michael Noble. Take it away.
Hi, Governor. Welcome, and thank you for joining us at Fresh Energy's Benefit Breakfast in 2020.
Well, thank you, Michael, and thanks to everybody at Fresh Energy for the work you do. Wish we could be in person, but glad to be here.
Governor, I know you had several strong climate bills in 2019 and 2020 that did not become law, including your 100% clean electricity standard. So looking to the future, what is your ambition for aligning Minnesota's economic growth with the very, very steep reductions in carbon emissions that the science requires?
Yeah, and they both go hand in hand, as we're seeing across sectors, whether it's the production of clean cars, or whether it's the financial markets now, not just seeing clean and sustainable as a fringe, but seeing it as the core to economic development. Something I know you have talked about for many years, and so our proposals, we're just going to come back more energized than ever. But I think the folks this morning listening recognize we just lost 2 years. We lost 2 years. And in this fight with climate, 2 years is way too much. So I'm going to come back again. I think we're going to continue to push folks that this is not only the right thing to do in terms of climate, it's the right thing to do for the economy. We've seen many sectors start to get on board.
Governor, we so much appreciate your administration taking the very strong step forward in the transportation sector with your Clean Cars initiative. So how else can we move forward reducing greenhouse gas emissions across all different sectors of our Minnesota economy?
Yeah, and I think we're all seeing the folks who are still fighting this. It shocks me. I know recently here in the last week or so, CEO of Ford announcing that they're redoubling their efforts because the future lies in electric vehicles, including they're rolling out in the next year or so the F-150. And I think all of us know it's coming, but that's one sector of it. We have to look at our building efficiencies, making sure we're incentivizing people to move that way. And I think every proposal we put out centered around this issue of equity and climate, something we worked hard on, and I want to come back again, is food production and food waste is a real place where we can not only reduce carbon emissions, we can work as carbon sinks, and we can have the added benefit of moving more nutritious food to more communities without the waste that we have. Those are areas that I think don't get the attention at first look, but as we take in, a zero emissions, a zero carbon future on electrical generation, a clean cars future where we see the markets really working to sell those, building efficiencies, incentivizing people, and then looking at all of those other areas like food production. I think your folks this morning on this call and others, this excites people, and it especially excites entrepreneurs who know that there is a way to make money doing the right thing. Well, the good news is that this next generation coming up already gets it. They're a built-in force to get this done. We empower them to get that going, and then we build those counterintuitive coalitions. You have done a good job of never making this about. I always talk as a teacher about Maslow's hierarchy. It's not about self-actualization. It's the right thing to do. This is a protection of your health, protection of your business, protection of the future. I think coming back to them and showing that. I mean, the irony of Clean Cars is the Clean Cars initiative is truly making the free market work in a better way rather than gaming the system towards fossil fuels. And when you can start to bring in those types of folks, we're seeing, again, the investment sides of things moving towards a more socially responsible and environmentally responsible investing policy. Those are new folks at the table with a strong voice.
Governor, you're talking to a lot of Fresh Energy supporters this morning. So what can Fresh Energy supporters do to help your administration accelerate the progress on climate change?
I think you have built a sustainable model that brings in, and to be very candid, over the years, I have followed a lot of the leads of Fresh Energy to see what things are possible. And we were able to move legislation in the United States Congress based on that. And, the ideas of a blue-green alliance, the idea of bringing in communities and centering our work in equity, at the same time creating wealth. And to be very candid, there are positive things that a market can do as long as that market isn't manipulated, and using the free market to promote a clean energy future. And you do that as well as anybody, I think. Lift up your voices, hold folks accountable, and again, should be a pretty wide range of spectrum of political ideology that agrees that this is the way to go.
Governor, thank you for your time this morning. We're really, really fortunate that you were able to join us, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good breakfast.
Thanks again to Governor Tim Walz for joining us this morning. It's really good to hear you affirm the urgency of the climate crisis and how important it is to act. We are grateful for your leadership and commitment to Minnesota's clean energy landscape. The fact is, Minnesota can and must undergo a significant energy transition. And as Governor Walz said, we need to cut carbon from our whole economy. This isn't the time for incremental progress. We need big solutions, and with change like this happening, it's more vital than ever that we center racial, gender, and economic equity. And just yesterday, our board of directors adopted a new mission, vision, and strategic imperatives for the organization. If I were to sum up our plan in 2 words, it would be these: ambition and equity. Together, we can power a change that addresses the climate crisis at the pace and scale of the problem, while we build a more just economy that's carbon neutral. Now you say, what does that look like in our everyday work? A few members of our staff made this video to show you how they are driving progress on climate and energy, even during a pandemic. And as you watch this, please remember, donors like you make Fresh Energy's important work possible. Immediately following the video, I'm pleased to welcome Ted Kontag from Parable Wealth Partners, our title sponsor, to the stage. Parable helps families plan their finances in ways consistent with their values. He'll share a few inspiring words about why this work is so important to him. Now roll the video.
Even though our office has been closed since early March, Fresh Energy is still making great progress in our mission to build bold policy solutions to achieve equitable carbon-neutral economies.
These are unprecedented times, but our staff have been using video calls, webinars, digital organizing, and other strategies to keep getting the policy results that you expect from Fresh Energy. We wanted to give you a few highlights of what we're working on this year, starting with Justin and Jay.
The state capitol may have never been quieter, but the conversation hasn't stopped. All session long, in all our work, we'll be raising our voice with legislators, public officials, and partners to catalyze support for a carbon-neutral economy and to build public resolve for a more equitable, carbon-neutral Minnesota.
We're working hard across the political and social spectrum to craft a strong climate agreement for climate action and a carbon-neutral economy.
Some of the most important decisions affecting Minnesota's energy future happen at the Public Utilities Commission. Even though the hearing room is closed right now, there's more going on than ever. Fresh Energy is still participating in critical online hearings and submitting expert filings across dockets. There's major decisions being made on rate cases, integrated resource plans, coal plant closures, and much more. And Fresh Energy's policy staff is there every step of the way.
Fresh Energy's regulatory efforts around energy efficiency are helping Minnesota be a national leader by working with utilities to ensure that the needs of customers come first. The energy access and equity work we've been focused on these past few years is more critical now than ever before. COVID-19 has laid bare the challenge in front of us, and we're proud to be working for an equitable and just transition to clean energy that benefits and engages all communities. Anna will tell us more.
The most important part of a green recovery is ensuring that everyone gets a say, is involved in the process, and benefits from the transition to clean energy. That's why in process and outcome, Fresh Energy is committed to working with communities who have historically been left out of policymaking, yet are often the most impacted by the climate crisis. An important part of this transition is helping people understand what's really going on with clean energy. Dan knows something about that.
The way we use energy is changing fast, and some of the most exciting shifts are happening in our communities. The Energy News Network covers these stories and shines a light on energy policy decision-making across the country. We're an editorially independent news service of Fresh Energy, and our team of more than a dozen journalists covers the clean energy transition from coast to coast. Since we're always virtual, our work hasn't missed a beat. We're all staying home more these days, so you might want to hear a bit more about indoor air quality from Margaret.
Most people don't realize that if you've got a gas stove, you're combusting fossil fuels in your home, impacting indoor air quality, and contributing to carbon pollution. For these reasons and more, Fresh Energy is working in multiple venues to replace oil, gas, and propane with clean electricity. Now, this transition provides major benefits to all Minnesotans, and we are focused on significant education and outreach strategies, as well as advancing easy access to technology solutions like heat pumps based on water heaters, induction cooking, and more. As we shape policies to move off of fossil fuels and onto electricity, it is vitally important that we have a zero carbon grid. This is Isabel's bread and butter.
Minnesota-grown clean energy from wind and solar is the obvious choice and makes up a growing portion of our electricity supply. But, like with most things, the devil's in the details. Fresh Energy is one of the few groups that really digs into the nitty-gritty around renewable interconnection, pricing, and infrastructure, moving us toward a future where electricity is zero carbon, highly affordable, and a source of good-paying jobs.
In the US and Minnesota, transportation is the biggest source of emissions. One solution? Electric vehicles. By moving our cars, buses, and trucks off of fossil fuels and onto that clean electricity that Isabel mentioned, we can reduce emissions dramatically. A major focus of our work this year is making sure that Governor Walz's clean car standards are enacted, since they promise to bring Minnesotans a trifecta of benefits for our health, our pocketbooks, and our climate. We're glad you got this peek into some of Fresh Energy's work. There's much more that we do and many more staff people working hard each and every day to get results. To find out more and get the latest updates, check out our website, fresh-energy.org.
It's kind of a funny story how Fresh Energy and I found each other. 3 years ago, I was invited to this event by a friend, but I quickly found out upon arrival that he hadn't bothered to register me. Throughout the mix-up, I was sent to 3 different tables where there was supposedly a spot. No luck at the first 2, but the third time was a charm. But along the way, I met some of the nicest people, welcoming and kind and positive and optimistic. I'm not sure what I was expecting from the people attending a breakfast at the crack of dawn focused on the dismal topic of climate change and the world coming to an end. But what I experienced at these 3 tables certainly was not what I was expecting. Once the presentation started, I understood. Fresh Energy's positive approach to this work attracts great people. Fresh Energy focuses on optimism, possibility, and real solutions. Their thoughtful and practical approach leads to effective policies and lasting impact. It's pretty cool stuff. Well, since I can't make my way to your table today like I did 4 years ago, I get to introduce myself digitally. I'm Ted Kontag, a founding partner of Parable Wealth Partners. A parable is defined as a simple story that reveals a deeper truth. Whether we recognize it or not, we are all part of a story that is happening all around us. And too often, we're led to believe that the story we are in is one of fear and scarcity and hopelessness. But our mission at our financial planning practice is to help our clients discover a different story, one of hope and contentment and confidence, so that you can live out your passions with abundance and generosity. When I get to meet others who share these values, I'm all in. That's why I was drawn to Fresh Energy. Their team is packed with fearless change makers, brimming with positivity, intelligence, innovation, and commitment. They're changing the environmental story from one of passive ignorance to one of positive transformation. This year, we've seen and experienced a seemingly endless stream of things to worry about, not the least of which is climate change. Just a few years ago, we used to talk about how climate change would impact our kids or our grandchildren someday. But we're seeing the effects now in our lifetime. Minnesota has an opportunity to lead the nation right now and show the Midwest and the rest of the country how to transition to a cleaner, more sustainable energy future, one that leads to jobs, economic stability, and equity for more people. Fresh Energy is making a monumental impact on energy policy. Every time I see the progress that Fresh Energy has championed, my hope is renewed. I may not be a scientist or policy analyst, but I am all in on the story of a clean energy economy and all in on the Fresh Energy story. So now I get to invite you to be part of that story. I get to offer you the opportunity to invest in Fresh Energy's work. We're asking for a donation of $125. And every single dollar makes a difference. But if you have the capacity to give a gift of $500, or if you can become a Power Circle donor by making a gift of $1,000 or even $5,000, it will help fuel positive and clean change. And if you're a savvy investor, you'll be interested in hearing that a generous pool of donors has agreed to match any donation of $250 or more. That's an immediate 100% return. And I didn't even have to run that past my chief investment officer to know that's a pretty great deal. The simple story here, the parable, if you will, is that a small group of people coming together like we are today and each making a contribution can change the world. Thank you for being a part of the Fresh Energy story.
Thank you so much, Ted. We're so grateful for your title sponsorship of the Benefit Breakfast and for taking time to rally the crowd in support of Fresh Energy. And now I am incredibly pleased to introduce our featured speaker, Dr. Leah Stokes. She's a national expert on energy policy, on climate policy, and on environmental politics. She has a fantastic new book, Short Circuiting Policy, where she examines how states have stumbled and fallen down on clean energy and how we can turn it around. So following her keynote, I'll join her back on the screen for a short conversation. So take it away, Dr. Leah Stokes.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us for this very important event. I'm delighted to have been asked to speak with you today. My name is Leah Stokes, and I'm a professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the opportunity that we have before us when it comes to cleaning up our electricity system and how that opportunity can really catalyze decarbonization across our economy while creating millions of good-paying jobs in the process. So the challenge that we face is something that I have called the Narwhal Curve. And the basic idea is that we have to build an enormous amount of clean electricity very quickly. If we were to target the year 2050 for a fully clean electricity system, which is the number that a lot of people were talking about just a few years ago, we have to be ramping up the speed that we deploy renewables. Because if we were to start in the year 2000, and draw a straight line out to 2050, we would need to grow the clean electricity share by 2 percentage points every year. And in the very best year so far, we've only hit about 1.7 percentage points of new renewable energy. So in many ways, we've been living on borrowed time with our nuclear fleet and our hydropower fleet, and we need to be acting a lot faster on renewables. Now, today, many are saying that 2050 is not fast enough. Scientific reports such as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC, they have put out reports that say in order to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we need to cut our emissions by about half by the year 2030. And electricity is truly the best way that we can get to decarbonization across our economy. So what if we targeted 100% clean electricity by 2035? That's a new idea that has a lot of people talking. And this is an image that shows you the kind of slope that we're talking about in terms of speeding up clean energy deployment. We need to be moving a lot faster, though it is quite doable. If you're interested in this argument, I actually made a little video about it that you could share with people in your businesses or your friends or your colleagues. It's called the Narwhal Curve video, and you can just go to bit.ly/Narwhal Curve, and you can share this basic idea with people. Now, of course, states across the country have already been leading the way in targeting 100% clean or 100% renewable energy. We have some states like California, Nevada, New Mexico, in some ways parts of Colorado, as well as New York, Maine, many parts of our country. In fact, maybe as much as 20% of our states have been acting to try to target 100% clean electricity. And of course, in Minnesota, we came very close to getting this law on the books. And that really, truly will be an important change going forward to have Minnesota join all the other leaders across this country that are targeting 100% clean electricity. Now, I'm going to tell you a bit of a magic trick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can get from cleaning up our electricity system to solving the lion's share of the climate problem. So how do we do that? We do that by electrifying as much as we can. So we can start by cleaning up the electricity system. That today is about 27% of the US's total carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. All right, well, that's only about a quarter of the way. So how am I going to get us so much farther? Well, I'm going to add in the transportation sector. That is, in fact, the largest sector right now for greenhouse gas emissions. It's another quarter of our emissions. And although we won't be able to clean up every single slice of that sector because things like aviation will be difficult to electrify, we can do a lot of that 28%. Next, I'm going to add in the building sector. And buildings, commercial and residential buildings, account for about 12% of our greenhouse gas emissions. Right now, we're using a lot of fossil gas to heat our homes, to do cooking. Lots of things that happen in our homes when it comes to energy involve fossil fuels. So if we electrify our homes through things like heat pumps and induction stoves that are getting really cheaper by the day and have all these health benefits too by not having indoor air pollution, we can get another 12% of our carbon emissions done. And finally, I'm going to add in half of our heavy industry emissions. Heavy industry contributes about 22% of our emissions, but there are parts of our industrial sector that can be electrified. So if we add up the electricity, transportation, building, and industrial sector, we get to between 70 to 80% of all US emissions. So electricity really is the first linchpin of our economy-wide decarbonization. It is a catalyst that can allow us to use clean power to do so many things that we need to do. And it truly presents a once-in-a-century opportunity to our electric power industry to have massive growth, lots of new jobs, lots of new generation facilities, and to use that clean power and leadership to clean up the rest of our economy. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, this is a great story. That was a great magic trick, but can we actually do it? Can we clean up our electricity system fast? And the good news is that we had a landmark report come out this summer. You can just go to the 2035report.com and you can learn about the research from scientists at UC Berkeley and Grid Lab, as well as Energy Innovation. And what they did is they modeled how quickly can we clean up our electricity system? How quickly can we get to 90% clean? And they show that it is very doable by 2035. Indeed, we can actually be saving customers money as we clean up our electricity system. Because in lots of parts of our country right now, continuing to operate old and dirty coal plants is not just bad for our public health or bad for the climate crisis, it's also bad for customers' bills. It's quite an expensive approach. And so cleaning up our electricity system is not just technologically feasible, it's also economically beneficial by lowering customers' bills. I'll leave you with one final thought, which is that we are having leadership from some parts of our corporate sector. There are a few utilities that are leading the way, such as NIPSCO, parts of Xcel Energy, and others in this country who are targeting cleaning up our electricity system in a faster timeline. They're targeting things like an 80% reduction by 2030. And that truly is the kind of leadership that we need in terms of a pathway to 2035 and 100% clean electricity. And we also have other corporate leaders like Google that has made a truly landmark commitment over the last month. They have committed to 100% clean electricity by 2030, supplied to all their facilities in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That kind of bold and visionary target is the sort of leadership that we need to be seeing from our corporate community. We need our corporate leaders to be saying, yes, we can do this, and we can do it quickly. So thank you very much. And if you're interested in learning about more of my work, I have a new podcast called A Matter of Degrees. And indeed, in the most recent episode, we talk about cleaning up our electricity system by 2030 and how that can clean up our buildings and our transportation sector. You can also check out my book, Short Circuiting Policy, and a wonderful collection of essays that I'm featured in called All We Can Save, which truly would make a great present for anyone in your life who is interested in climate change. So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing to support Fresh Energy, a wonderful organization, and to drive climate action in the state of Minnesota.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Leah Stokes. What a great honor to have you at our Fresh Energy Benefit Breakfast. You know, I'm your biggest fan. I have your book.
Oh, thank you.
I have your book, and I have your inscription in your book says, "For my climate warrior friends at the great Fresh Energy, Leah Stokes." And I have your other books, All We Can Save, and I listened to your brand new podcast already. I think you have 2 episodes.
Yeah,
A Matter
and
of
there's going to be
Degrees.
a third on the topic that we're talking about today.
It's an amazing podcast because it makes climate politics and climate science and climate solutions understandable to a lay audience, and that's one of my top priorities in life, is to be able to talk in English so regular people can come along for the ride. So I have a few questions for you today. Let's imagine that there is a big federal stimulus bill in 2021. It's part of an economic recovery from COVID, and that there's a sizable commitments of funds to Minnesota that would be discretionary. What climate priorities should Minnesota be investing in? What should we do with the federal dollars that might come to our state?
Well, I know Minnesota has already been trying to think about targeting more clean energy at a faster timeline. And so that's a really exciting thing. A clean electricity standard, 100% in a short time period would be great. And then in terms of the federal dollars, you know, cleaning up our buildings, electrifying them, that's going to be such a big priority going forward. And it's a great opportunity to actually create jobs in Minnesota, because when it comes to retrofitting a home, if you're going to remove fossil gas from cooking or heating, you know, that can't be taken overseas. It can't be done somewhere else. And it can be done in every single county across the state. So it really can create jobs in all parts of the state. So I think cleaning up the building sector is really key, and using some of those federal dollars to supercharge charging infrastructure and get more people driving clean cars. I think that those are all big opportunities when it comes to using clean electricity to power more parts of our economy.
Okay. So one thing I love about your book is that focuses on state energy policy, and that's where I've spent my life, is on state energy policy. And someday you'll have to write a chapter about Minnesota's state energy policy history. But you cover Texas and Kansas and Ohio and Arizona. And the common thread in all of those states is that good intentions ran aground, and some clean energy progress was thwarted by the fossil fuel interests, who overwhelmed the process in the end. But one thing that was very interesting to me is you said that even when good laws are passed, there's somehow some kind of a fog, that the language isn't always exactly explicitly clear, and so it requires state agencies to implement the new laws, and that's sometimes where the fossil fuel interests have a big upper hand. Can you tell us how Minnesota might be doing better than that with groups like Fresh Energy at the table, and how robust public participation in implementation of these new laws is really critical?
Well, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth there, because making sure that NGOs who are smart and who can follow bills all the way from enactment through to implementation, making sure that those organizations are well financed and can show up throughout the process of both making new laws and implementing them is so crucial. It is what makes the difference between having a clean electricity standard or another climate policy on the books and making sure that it actually hits the ground and hits people in their daily lives. And that's actually why I think it's so important to be supporting the work of Fresh Energy, because you run an organization that has been doing this for so long in Minnesota, that maintains the ties exactly that I talk about in the book with legislators, with other groups that can really be effective, not just in helping pass laws, but making sure that they're implemented in an effective way. So everybody who's shown up today and has supported your organization is really part of this fight, and everybody should be doing even more to support organizations like Fresh Energy, because they are an important part of the process of ensuring that we get these laws implemented in the most robust way.
Talk a little bit about your idea that ratepayer funding from the utility ratepayers should support broad public interest, nonprofit participation in regulatory proceedings.
So yeah, there's something called an intervenor compensation program. These exist in a handful of states. They can be designed in different ways. But what it does is it basically provides funding for groups like Fresh Energy to make sure that during the regulatory process, when decisions are made, that we have environmental groups, consumer advocates, people working, for example, for low-income families who are struggling to pay their energy bills. All of these people get to show up, and they have the resources to do that. And the way that our utility system works, utilities always have the money to show up and do that because they're able to charge their costs to ratepayers through funds. And so why don't we charge the costs of some of these advocates showing up in the public interests to ratepayers too? And there's been an independent analysis of this program in California, which actually shows that it has saved ratepayers hundreds of millions of dollars. So this idea pays itself back. And I think it just becomes more equal in terms of leveling out the playing field because, utilities should be able to have a view in rate cases, of course, but we want to have a diversity of opinion in these rate cases. And so something like passing an intervenor compensation program allows everybody to participate in our democracy in a more equal way. And, this idea is even supposed to exist at the federal level through FERC, but it has never been implemented. So I think we're starting to be at a time where we might see a renaissance in focus on passing intervenor compensation programs. And we're in Minnesota to do that. Wow. That would be a huge, huge thing that would definitely put your state on the map in terms of clean energy leadership.
Thank you so much for that. Your book was really great, the short-circuiting policy, and I know a lot of the stories from knowing a lot of the advocates over the years, but you just really wrote a profound history of American energy politics. Arizona, Kansas, Texas, Ohio, and they're all different amazing stories for different reasons. But again, the common thread is that the good intentions got off the rails, and oftentimes fossil fuel interests and their utility allies got the upper hand. But really, we want it to be different in Minnesota. So I'm going to ask you this very, very pointed question. Since one of your top climate solutions is electrify everything we can possibly electrify, wouldn't the electric industries potentially be a pretty powerful ally and climate hero for getting the carbon out of the rest of the economy? I always tease my friend in the electric industry, what part of ExxonMobil's market share don't you want?
Well, you've hit on a really exciting potential end to this story, which would transform utilities from being not the heroes in many ways, into maybe the heroes of this story. And we are at this crossroads where utilities can change the story and they can see the massive opportunity before them in terms of electrification and start to say, hey, this is a once in a century opportunity to grow my business. I mean, were Samuel Insull alive today, this is one of the main forefathers of the electric utility industry, he would just be quivering in his boots. He'd be so, or that's not the right metaphor, he'd be so excited to get all this new market share. And I don't know why utilities have been a little slow at the draw, so to speak, to understanding exactly what I laid out, that they could be running, 70 to 80% of our energy system, and they could claw that market share away from the fossil fuel industry. So that's really where we find ourselves right in this moment. We find ourselves at a crossroads where we have to say, are our electric utilities going to change their tune and start becoming allies in the climate fight and really grow their business? Because I'll tell you one thing I didn't talk about, that if you watch the Narwhal Curve video, you'll see. When we talk about 100% clean electricity, we're not even really talking about 100%. We're talking about 150%. We're talking about 200%. We're talking about maybe 300%. We have to grow the amount of generation massively as we electrify transportation and buildings and parts of heavy industry. Now, that might feel overwhelming from one side, but if you're a smart person, you see opportunity, you see job creation in the utility industry. So I'm hopeful that the utilities will start to be a Goliath that takes on another Goliath, as opposed to a Goliath that is taking on the Davids, all of us who are trying to have a stable planet. So, I'm hopeful this story could have a different ending. And that's really the exciting thing that we have right before us right now.
So, Leah, I have one more question, and then we'll end this formal Q&A. But why don't we just keep talking a little while longer, and maybe we could put out some bonus content. Isn't that what podcasters love to talk about, is bonus content? And we'll send out an extra video with you and I talking to everybody who makes a donation today. Okay?
Sounds great.
So here's my last question. Everybody says this is a moment in history like no other moment in history. The kids, our activists, our grassroots, this powerful youth movement, they put it in shorthand, say, we have 10 years to turn the corner to save the planet. And some scientists quibble with the precision of their language, but we more or less know they're mostly right about this. This is about approximately correct, or I like to say it's true enough. So, a transformative change completely to the economy, not just in Minnesota, not just in America, but worldwide, transform the economy away from fossil fuels, beginning now. Explain why this moment in history, it's possible, when 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 15 years ago, it was not.
Well, I just want to say that I really encourage everybody to give a donation today, and I'm going to make a donation too, so I hope you'll follow that, and then I'll get my own bonus content, I suppose, which is funny. But yeah, why do we have this moment right now? Well, we've spent the last several decades developing all this new technology. We have electric vehicles that are affordable. I have an electric vehicle right now. I love it, by the way. Awesome car. We have heat pumps that are affordable. We have induction stoves. We have new technologies to transform our heavy industry and make it electric. We have all these tools that we can use to power our entire society with clean energy. And of course, in the electricity industry directly, we have really cheap wind and solar and batteries. And it's being shown by groups like Energy Innovation that you can shut down coal plants in parts of the Midwest, all throughout the Southeast. You can shut them down tomorrow and replace them with a new wind plant, and you'll actually save customers money. So we have all the technology that we need. There isn't a question at this point about whether we can do it. It's kind of like putting a person on the moon, right? When we started that effort, we said, oh, could we do it? I don't know. And we pushed a lot in over a decade, and we managed to do it. And the same can be true in terms of tackling the climate crisis. This is not an impossible problem. It's economically doable. It's technologically doable. And when you get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work that we have to do, you need to flip that around and see opportunity, right? We're talking about a really unprecedented chance to build tons of new electric generating infrastructure to employ millions of people across the economy. And those jobs will be in places like Minnesota because they're jobs that can't be taken overseas. So it really is a transformative moment that we find ourselves in. And it's because we have the technology we need, it's cheap to do it, and it can involve employing a lot of people who right now, for example, are struggling with work and employment. So I think it's a big opportunity. It's not just a big scary thing, climate change. It's also a big chance to really rebuild our economy.
Dr. Leah Stokes, thank you so much for participating in our Benefit Breakfast 2020. You've really uplifted us all and helped us see the future that we're all striving for together. Thank you, Dr. Stokes.
Well, I'm a big supporter of what you're doing, and I really hope that everybody who's tuning in is digging deep. And, in my religious practice, we say that you should give as much as you possibly can so that you don't regret and you don't feel like, could I have given more? So really dig deep and give as much as you can to Fresh Energy, because they're an amazing organization that's doing the exact work that's necessary to transform the economy and to meet this challenge as we talked about. So I hope that all of you will give some money today.
Thank you again, Dr. Stokes.
Wow, Leah, thank you for showing us how much work still needs to be done. It's really valuable to hear how deeply you think about clean energy public policy and the political power we need to overcome fossil fuel opponents. As we're winding down our program, I wanted to take the time to thank every one of you who has made a donation this morning. We are so grateful for your support of Fresh Energy. Every dollar you contribute is an investment to ensure a path forward as we work to eliminate fossil fuel emissions and power our world with clean, carbon-free energy. As you've heard this morning, powering our communities with clean energy is the greatest economic and job creation opportunity of our time. But it will only be so if the path towards a clean energy future is led by justice. And on a more personal note, as an auntie to 7 beautiful nieces and nephews, thank you for your commitment to creating a safe and healthy environment for them and all future generations to grow up in. If you haven't done so already, I hope you'll take the time to make a gift at whatever level is meaningful to you. There is no time to wait. Our climate crisis is more urgent than ever. So thank you for giving generously. Now, I'll turn it back over to Michael for the final word.
Thank you, Janiece. And thank you again to Dr. Leah Stokes, to Governor Tim Walz, and to Ted Kontag for joining us front and center this morning. I also want to take the time to thank all of our sponsors, our title sponsor, Parable Wealth Partners, our Fair of the Future sponsors, our Friends of the Future sponsors, and the Match Pool sponsors for underwriting this event today. And thank you again to our table captains, who are key contributors to the Benefit Breakfast every year by filling the room, I guess filling the Zoom this year, with passionate climate champions, enthusiastic clean energy supporters, and generous fresh energy donors. And now, one moment that we've all been waiting for, the lucky winners of our Own Your Own Tesla, just for a day, drawing. They are Kevin Ruther and Ken Ioso. Congratulations to 2 lucky winners. Our staff will be in touch with you to arrange this. So, as we wrap up this morning, I am deeply inspired and honored to see this enthusiastic commitment to our common clean energy future by your attendance and by your generous gifts this morning. I know that these are difficult, uncertain times, but Fresh Energy is here to build a bright future. Thank you again for attending our 2020 Benefit Breakfast. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay tuned for an email later today that will announce just how much we all came together and how much we raised in support of an equitable, carbon-free future for Minnesota and beyond. Goodbye.